My childhood sweetheart Jason was the top student in our grade. To make sure the school beauty Lena, who always ranked at the bottom, could get into Stanford with him, he decided to help her cheat on the college entrance exam. I told him that cheating was illegal and tried to talk him out of it. Later, he listened to me and didn't help her cheat. In the end, he and I both got into Stanford together. After graduation, we naturally ended up together. Our life was comfortable and happy, but when I was about to give birth, he refused to take me to the hospital. Because of that, I died in agony. Desperate? You deserve it, he said coldly. Lena was more desperate than you were back in the exam hall. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. Back to the day Jason told me he wanted to help Lena cheat on the college entrance exam. Lena wanted him to help her cheat during the exam. In my previous life, Jason had asked me the same thing. I told him that cheating on the exam was a criminal offense, and that he shouldn't risk his future for someone who had nothing to do with him. He listened to me and didn't do it. Later, we both got into the same university, joined the same company, and eventually got married. After marriage, he often said to me gently, "Thank you, Emma. If you hadn't talked me out of cheating before the exam, I really don't know what kind of person I'd be now." But when I was about to give birth and begged him to take me to the hospital, his tone turned sharp and cold. "If it weren't for you telling me not to cheat, I wonder how happy I'd be with Lena right now. You're the reason Lena and I couldn't be together. You ruined everything. If you hadn't interfered, she and I would have gone to the same university. You stole her place. Desperate. You deserve it," he sneered again. "Lena was more desperate than you were that day in the exam hall." Lena took my phone, cut off all ways I could reach the outside world, and sat on the couch smiling, watching me writhe in pain on the floor. Her face was filled with the twisted pleasure of revenge. In the end, I died in agony with my baby still inside me. "Emma, did you hear me?" I said. "Lena wants me to help her cheat during the exam." Jason thought I was zoning out and repeated himself. His eyes were bright, full of anticipation, as if waiting for my reaction. I just replied calmly, "Oh, this time I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. I only wanted to draw a clear line between us. If he wanted to cheat, that was his choice. I would respect his fate." He grabbed my sleeve, his gaze probing. "Oh, what's that supposed to mean? Emma, did you even hear what I said? Lena wants me to help her cheat on the college exam. You're not going to stop me." I frowned. "That's your business. Why should I stop you? You can make your own decisions." Jason hesitated. "But cheating on the exam is illegal. If I get caught, at best my scores will be canceled and at worst I could go to jail." So he did know cheating was illegal. He was afraid of going to jail too. He didn't dare help Lena cheat, but he was too embarrassed to reject her outright. So he came to me hoping I'd step in and play the bad guy for him. In my previous life, that was exactly what happened. He had just gone along with the flow, pretending to be innocent. Once I realized that, my disgust toward Jason grew even stronger. Just as I was thinking about how to get rid of him, his goddess appeared. Lena, the school beauty. She wore a white sundress, her delicate face glowing with a bright, charming smile. Even without makeup, she looked like she had stepped out of a dream. When she saw Jason, she smiled and said sweetly, "Hey, top of the class. What a coincidence seeing you here." Then she noticed me and looked a little surprised. "Oh, is this your girlfriend?" I had to admit, when the goddess spoke, her words carried weight. As soon as Jason heard her, he flinched like he'd been electrocuted and instantly pushed me aside. He quickly explained, No, she's just my neighbor. There's nothing between us." Lena nodded knowingly, her big bright eyes blinking playfully. Then she smiled and asked, "By the way, have you thought about that thing I mentioned before, Mr. Straight A? Can you give me a clear answer now?" Lena asked, her voice sweet and coaxing. Jason smiled so hard that his eyes nearly disappeared. Every time Lena called him top of the class or Mr. Straight A, her sugary tone made his whole body melt. But I could see he was still hesitant. He looked troubled. "I really want to help you," he said. "But Emma's mom and my mom are close friends. I'm afraid she might tell my mom." I was speechless. He actually wanted to dump the blame on me. Where did he get the nerve? I cut him off immediately. "You're overthinking it. I'm not interested in meddling in your business, and I'm not childish enough to go tattling to your mom." If you want to help her, then help her. If you don't, then refuse. Just don't pin it on me. Lena seemed to understand. She looked slightly embarrassed and said softly, Mr. Straight A, if you don't want to help, you can just say no. You don't need to make excuses like that. Jason flushed in panic. He shot me a reproachful glance, then turned back to Lena to explain quickly. That's not what I meant. I was just worried, that's all. But now that Emma said that, I feel better. As he kept talking, he finally made up his mind about what you asked me to do. Okay, I'll help you. At that moment, teenage impulse completely overpowered his reason. He decided to gamble his future for the girl he liked. Lena threw herself into his arms like a white dove, her voice trembling with excitement. That's wonderful, Jason. Thank you. If we both get into the same university in the future, I'll be your girlfriend. Jason looked dazed with joy, holding her awkwardly, his hands trembling as if he didn't know where to put them. He met her gaze, his eyes full of determination. I'll make sure we get into the same university. Lena's eyes shimmered. She nodded earnestly. I believe you. While the two of them stood there on the street, lost in their little world, I quietly slipped away. The college entrance exam was tomorrow, and I still had to go home and review a few key points. I had no time or patience to watch their public display of affection. Fortunately, I still had the memories of this body. High school knowledge came easily to me. Otherwise, with the mind of my 20-something self from my previous life, I might not even have been able to pass the exam this time. But when I opened the door at home, I ran right into Jason's mother, Mrs. Lee. She was chatting with my mom, showing off as usual. So tell me, she said proudly, with my son's grades, should he choose Harvard or MIT? What if he scores so high that both schools come to our door fighting over him? They're both first-class universities. Turning either one down would be such a shame. My mom laughed politely. He really is doing great, she said, forcing a smile. Not like my daughter. She just loves to play around. Maybe she can catch up to Harvard or MIT's coattails at best. She was just trying to be polite, but Mrs. Lee frowned slightly, clearly dissatisfied. My son likes to play too, she said, waving a hand. He's always running around after class, but what can I do? He's just naturally smart. He still manages to rank first every time. In other words, her son didn't even have to study hard. He was born brilliant. My mom didn't respond. She just smiled helplessly. She was long used to Mrs. Lee's competitive streak. Although the two of them had been friends for a lifetime, Mrs. Lee had been competing with my mom just as long. When they were kids, it was about clothes and food. When they grew up, it was grades. After they got married, it was their husbands. And through all those years, she had almost never beaten my mom at anything. It wasn't until she gave birth to Jason, a so-called prodigy, that she finally found something to boast about. After her husband died, she poured all her energy into her son, constantly showing him off to anyone who would listen. She especially loved comparing Jason to me since my grades had always been a little worse than his. But that little triumph of hers would only last until today. When Mrs. Lee saw me, her eyes curved in a polite smile, but that smile never reached them. Emma's back, she said sweetly. Are you nervous about the college exam tomorrow? I smiled politely. I'm fine, thank you. A glint of mockery flickered in her eyes. That's good, she said. Work hard, then try to get second place. Try to get into the same university as my Jason, Mrs. Lee said cheerfully. Work hard, sure, but getting into Lurington University like him? That's another story. I smiled faintly. I'll do my best, I said casually, and use studying as an excuse to retreat to my room. As I walked away, I could still hear Mrs. Lee chatting in the living room. Emma's mom, don't put too much pressure on Emma. After all, girls just aren't as smart as boys. No matter how hard she works, she'll never catch up to my Jason. For a girl, doing as well as she has is already impressive enough. During the college entrance exam, I performed normally, actually even better than in my previous life. This time I managed to correct a few of the questions I'd missed before, so my score should end up even higher. I was happy about that. Jason and Lena were happy too. Apparently, they'd managed to pass answers between them during the exam. Jason was convinced he had done great, and the two of them were already fantasizing about studying together at Stanford. Mrs. Lee adored Lena. She couldn't stop bragging about how her genius son had found such a beautiful girlfriend. As pretty as a movie star, she said. Her pride reached new heights. One afternoon, she was back at our house again, talking to my mom with her usual smug tone. Emma's mom. Maybe it's time you started worrying about Emma's future. Her grades aren't as good as Jason's, and her looks can't compare to Lena's either. What's she going to do later on? You should probably help her find someone before it's too late. I mean, a boy as excellent as my Jason got snatched up before even entering college. Your daughter might only have leftovers to choose from. If she had just bragged about her son, my mom probably would have ignored her. But belittling me? That crossed the line. My mom's expression went cold. To me, my daughter is already the best, she said firmly. She doesn't need anyone to take care of her. I can support her for the rest of her life if I have to. And Mrs. Lee, I'd appreciate it if you stopped saying things like that in the future. Seeing my mom defend me so fiercely, Mrs. Lee's smile stiffened. She quickly changed the subject, pretending nothing had happened. But once she left our house, I could still hear her muttering under her breath. She's just a girl. What's there to be so proud of? She's nowhere near as smart or capable as my Jason. He's 10 times better. In order to show off her son's brilliance, Mrs. Lee began telling everyone in the neighborhood that Jason was the top student in his grade, and that after the exam, he had started dating the beautiful school belle. A perfect couple, she boasted, the top student and the prettiest girl, both aiming for Stanford. Thanks to her endless bragging, their little romance soon attracted attention from a local TV station. The station even decided to interview Jason, which made Mrs. Lee's nose practically tilt toward the sky. Wanting to show off even more, she arranged for the TV interview to be filmed right in our neighborhood garden. As if that weren't enough, she insisted that my parents and I come too. Emma should come, she said. Let her get some exposure thanks to Jason. In front of the cameras, Mrs. Lee was the same as ever. Humble on the surface, smug underneath. My son doesn't really study that much, she said with a proud smile. He's just naturally smart. Honestly, it's not easy having a child who's too gifted. When other parents talk about how to motivate their kids, I have nothing to contribute. Even if I don't keep an eye on him, he still ends up ranking first every time. Of course, she couldn't resist taking a jab at me while pretending to be fair. Of course, I'm not saying hard work isn't good. As the saying goes, diligence makes up for lack of talent. My best friend's daughter, she smiled toward me, may not be as bright as my son, but she's been working hard. With effort, she might even manage to get into the same university as him. Her words drew a wave of admiration from the neighbors gathered around. Who wouldn't envy a child that's smart and easy to raise? Everyone praised Mrs. Lee for being such a great mother. But the reporters were clearly more interested in Jason and Lena than in Mrs. Lee's self-congratulations. After letting her talk for a bit, they quickly shifted the focus of the interview toward the young couple. Jason and Lena, the reporter said. Could you two share some of your study tips with everyone? Lena smiled and linked her arm through Jason's. The two of them were wearing matching outfits, his and hers. Under the sunlight, they looked like a picture-perfect couple. Jason said with a modest smile, My biggest study tip is to help others. Before the college exam, I helped Lena review for a while. It not only improved her grades, but also helped me strengthen what I'd learned. I think it's the best decision I made during high school. Lena looked up at him, her eyes full of admiration, as if she were gazing at her hero. Together, they completely stole the spotlight. Just then, two little kids came running in from the neighborhood gate, shouting breathlessly, The people from Stanford and Harvard are here to fight over the top scorer. And wait, the police are here too. Maybe the police came because they were afraid the admissions officers from the two universities might start a fight. Who could it be? Someone in the crowd whispered excitedly. Our neighborhood actually produced a top score on the college entrance exam. Instantly, everyone began buzzing with excitement. Who else could it be? Of course, it's Mrs. Lee's son, Jason. Yeah, he's the #1 student in the grade. If he's not the top scorer, who else would be? This is incredible. Must be some kind of family blessing. Mrs. Lee is really lucky to have raised such an outstanding son. I'm so jealous. Hearing that, Mrs. Lee's grin stretched almost to her ears. Jason, meanwhile, looked calm as if it were only natural. His face held that same gentle smile he always wore. Seeing his confidence, the crowd grew even more certain that he was the one who had taken first place. Their compliments became warmer and more exaggerated. Before long, the admissions officers from Stanford and Harvard arrived. As soon as Jason saw the logos on their suits, he strode forward proudly. "So," he said casually, "what kind of offers are you both making? But I'll say this up front. Wherever Lena goes, I go. You'll need to take her opinion into account when making your offers." The admissions officers from both universities exchanged puzzled looks. "You are?" One of them began hesitantly. Jason's lips curved into a lazy smile. "Jason Lee, top student of Westview High, the one you're here for, the top scorer." One of the Stanford representatives couldn't help but chuckle. "Young man," he said, half laughing, half exasperated, "we're not here for you. The top scorer this year is a girl, Emma Song." Jason's smile froze on his face. The noisy crowd fell completely silent. After a brief pause, my mom suddenly let out a shriek so sharp it could have woken the dead. "It's my daughter. My daughter Emma's the top scorer." She looked like someone who'd just been hit by a pie from heaven, so stunned she could barely stand straight. "Honey, pinch me," she said breathlessly to my dad. His face was flushed with pride and excitement. "What?" he said, half laughing, half crying. "To see if it hurts." "I'm afraid I'm dreaming," my mom said. But instead of fading, her smile only grew brighter. "It's not a dream. My daughter really is the top scorer." While our family was celebrating like we just won the lottery, Jason and Mrs. Lee stood there frozen, their faces dark with disbelief. Mrs. Lee hurried over to the Stanford representative, her voice sharp and desperate. "There must be some mistake, sir. How could she be the top scorer? My son's grades have always been better than hers. You must have mixed up their results." The admissions officer looked helpless. "Ma'am, this is an official matter. We don't make mistakes about things like that." Mrs. Lee could feel everyone's eyes on her. The same neighbors who had just been flattering her were now watching with a mix of curiosity and amusement. Panic flashed in her eyes. "That's impossible. She's just a girl. How could she be the top scorer? Something's wrong here. She must have cheated. She had to." Her ranting made my dad's face turn red with fury. "Mrs. Lee, are you out of your mind?" he snapped. "My daughter is the top scorer. If she had just scored high, maybe you could say she cheated, but she's number one in the entire city. Tell me, who could she possibly have copied from to get that score?" Mrs. Lee clearly realized she was making a fool of herself, but she still couldn't accept the truth. She stammered. "And maybe she copied from several people and just got lucky with the right answers." She pointed at the admissions officers again. "You have to investigate this. My son deserves that title. It's his." My mom was livid. "And what right do you have to accuse my daughter of cheating?" she shot back. Her usual scores were already good enough for Stanford or Harvard. It's not surprising she did even better this time. Don't slander others just because you're jealous. The Harvard representative finally stepped forward, his expression serious. "Ma'am," he said firmly, with all due respect, "even if Emma hadn't been the top scorer, your son still wouldn't be. His name isn't even in the top 50 of this city. I understand you want the best for him, but please be realistic. Since he didn't make the top 50, he's not even eligible for admission to either of our universities. And if he can't get in, neither can Miss Lena." The entire interview, which had started as a celebration for the supposed top student, had now turned into a complete joke. Mrs. Lee couldn't accept the truth. "That's impossible," she stammered. "You must have made a mistake. Maybe Emma switched her answer sheet with my son's." Yes, that must be it. Even now, she still thought her son's poor results were somehow my fault. But why didn't she stop to think about why her son had done so badly? Was it because he didn't perform well, or because he had done something that got his scores canceled? The moment that thought crossed my mind, I could tell Jason was thinking the same thing. His face turned pale and cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. But Mrs. Lee didn't notice her son's reaction at all. She was too busy shouting, convinced that I had switched his test papers. Then she spotted several police officers walking slowly toward us. Without a second's hesitation, she rushed over to them. "Officers, you have to help my son. His classmate Emma Song cheated." She switched answer sheets with him and stole his place as top scorer. Jason tried to stop her, but she shook him off. He looked as though he were about to fall apart. "Mom, please." Mrs. Lee pushed him aside and snapped, "Jason, don't be afraid. When something unfair happens, we have to tell the police. The officers will make things right for us." The lead officer frowned. "Jason Lee, that's your name." Mrs. Lee nodded rapidly like a pecking chicken. Yes, that's my son Jason Lee, the top student of Westview High. Since you know who he is, then this will be easy. Hurry up and arrest that cheater, Emma Song." The officer paused for a moment, then said evenly, "That's quite a coincidence. We are here to investigate a cheating case. But the person who cheated wasn't Emma Song. It was Jason Lee and Lena Chun." The words hit like a thunderclap. The officer turned toward Jason. "Jason Lee, Lena Chun, our investigation found evidence that you two exchanged answers during the college entrance exam. You're both suspected of cheating. Please come with us." Mrs. Lee nearly fainted on the spot. She couldn't believe it. Not only was her son not the top scorer, but now he was being arrested for cheating. She stood frozen, completely dumbfounded. Jason was the same. He didn't say a word at first, staring blankly as if his world had collapsed. It wasn't until the officers moved to escort him away that he finally snapped. He suddenly turned to me, his voice rising with fury. "Emma, this was your doing, wasn't it? You're the one who reported me. No one else knew I planned to help Lena cheat. Only you. If you didn't report me, who else could have done it?" How ridiculous. Mrs. Lee didn't blame Lena, the girl who'd asked her son to cheat, but instead turned on me just like he did. She jabbed her finger in my face, her eyes blazing. "Emma Song, how could you be so cruel? Just because my son liked another girl, you had to ruin his future. You're vicious. I've always treated you well. Is this how you repay me?" Her voice rose higher and higher until she was almost screaming. She even tried to rush at me, but my dad stepped forward and shoved her back. The police pretended not to notice the commotion, and one of them calmly explained to my parents. No one reported him. The entire exam hall was under surveillance. He thought he was being sneaky, but everything was caught on camera. Trying to cheat on a national exam. How naive. In short, Jason's downfall was entirely of his own making. It had nothing to do with me. At last Jason seemed to realize it too. The fight drained out of him. He stopped struggling and let the police lead him away in silence, his face empty of expression. The irony was almost painful. Mrs. Lee had called the police herself, and now they were the ones taking her son away. What a ridiculous ending. If anyone came out ahead from this circus, it was my mom and the TV station crew. What started as a fluffy interview about a model student couple had exploded into a nationwide scandal. Such a sensational story was bound to go viral. The reporters immediately swung their cameras toward me. The interview that was supposed to glorify Jason ended up turning into my spotlight. Funny, wasn't it? Mrs. Lee had insisted I should show my face thanks to her son's fame. Well, she got her wish. I suppose you could say he got what he deserved. In the end, I chose to go to Stanford. As for Jason, he wasn't sentenced to prison, but all of his exam results were nullified, and he was banned from taking the college entrance exam for 3 years. The same went for Lena. In my previous life, because I had talked Jason out of cheating, he didn't help Lena. He ended up acing the exam and became the top scorer everyone praised. But this time he got what he wanted. He helped Lena. And in doing so, he destroyed his own future. He was no longer the proud, high-spirited top student. He became a fool blinded by love, a disgraced name blacklisted by every university. Normally, even if the cheating had been discovered, the school would have handled it quietly. But Mrs. Lee had been so eager to show off that she'd invited the TV station to interview Jason live. The entire incident had been broadcast and uploaded online. No matter how much they wanted to hide it, there was no going back. The former #1 student, who once had the brightest future, had instantly become someone everyone wanted to avoid. At first, Jason tried to console himself. So what if I can't go to college anymore? I still have Lena, don't I? Everything I did was worth it for her. When he saw the medal hanging around my neck, the envy in his eyes was almost tangible. Though he tried to act calm, he forced a smirk and said, "So what if you're the top scorer? Big deal. I've been first place plenty of times in high school. One more or less doesn't matter. People like you only know how to bury your head in books. Even if you get into Stanford, so what? You'll probably still end up unemployed. If I hadn't lived an extra lifetime, maybe I would have believed him. But when I thought about my previous life, my six-figure salary, and the house I'd bought with ease, I couldn't help but smile without saying a word. So, he'd become one of those people who claimed that studying was useless. Let him comfort himself however he wanted. Maybe he noticed the faint hint of amusement in my eyes because he looked irritated. At least I still have Lena, he said stubbornly. If I can trade 3 years of my life for her love, I think it's worth it. I almost laughed. So naive. The pressure of senior year was already enough to crush most people. Retaking the college exam even once was hard. 3 years was nearly impossible. Where did he get the confidence that he could last that long? And he wasn't even planning to focus on studying again. He talked about starting some kind of business, all while fantasizing that he'd still get into Stanford 3 years later. Even if he did manage to sit the exam again, who would dare accept a student with a record of cheating? But I didn't bother arguing. I didn't want to say anything that might make him resent me again like he had in my previous life. So I just said calmly, "That's great. I hope all your dreams come true." If he wanted to delude himself, fine. It wasn't my time he was wasting. I turned to leave, but then Lena came running out of his house. Her eyes were red and swollen, and there was a fresh handprint on her cheek. Jason immediately stepped forward, panicked. "Lena, what happened?" She jerked away from his grasp, her face twisted with anger. "What do you think happened? Your crazy mother, that's what. Because of her, you can't go to college. She's been taking it out on me every day. I can't live like this anymore. Jason, if your mom keeps this up, we're done." Right then, Mrs. Lee came storming out after her, her voice sharp as a whip. "Jason, break up with her. After what she's done to you, how can you still stay with her? She's nothing but bad luck." Jason's face flushed with embarrassment. He sighed, clearly ashamed of the public scene. That's when Mrs. Lee noticed me. She seemed to have completely forgotten how she'd slandered me that day in front of everyone. Her attitude changed instantly, her tone soft and sugary as she smiled at me. "You know, Emma's actually a great girl," she said. "Smart, hardworking, perfect for you. She's even going to Stanford. When you finally get there in 3 years, she could look after you." Good grief. How did she come up with ideas this ridiculous? Jason glanced at me quickly, trying to pretend it was casual. I immediately cut in. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee, but I don't like idiots or boys." I almost said it out loud before catching myself just in time. Jason and Mrs. Lee hadn't even processed my words yet when Lena suddenly burst into laughter. "Oh, please. That's hilarious. Your son can't even get into college. And you think the top scorer, someone who can pick between Stanford and Harvard, would choose him? What a joke. He's a toad dreaming of eating swan meat." Mrs. Lee was so furious she nearly exploded. Her fists clenched tight as she stomped her foot. "You're talking nonsense. My son was the top student in his grade. If it weren't for you, he would have gone to college just fine. You're the one who ruined him. You wretched girl. You make me so angry I could die." Jason looked at Lena with disappointment in his eyes. "Lena, how could you say that? Everything I did it for you." Lena just sneered, raising an eyebrow. "For me? Did I force you? Did I trick you? Why do you have to blame your misfortune on me? You were already an adult before the exam. You should have taken responsibility for your own choices. Don't shove everything onto someone else." Her words hit like knives, each one striking right at Jason's pride. His eyes turned red, but he couldn't say a word in response. I had to admit, Lena really knew how to cut him down to size. Before leaving, she tossed one last remark over her shoulder. "You have 3 days to sort out things with your mother. If you don't, we're over." "I'm serious." "Lena," Jason called after her, but Mrs. Lee interrupted, snapping, "Enough. Can't you see she's been nothing but trouble? Break up with her already. She's ruined your life. You should stay far away from her." Jason's face turned scarlet with embarrassment. He sighed, clearly feeling humiliated. Then Mrs. Lee's gaze landed on me. She seemed to have completely forgotten how she'd falsely accused me before. Her tone turned sweet, her expression gentle as she said, "You know, Emma's actually perfect, smart, capable, such a good match for you. She even got into Stanford. When you finally get there in 3 years, she can look after you. God, what kind of insane logic was that? Jason's eyes flicked toward me, feigning nonchalance. Quickly cut in. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee, but I don't like idiots, was what I wanted to say. Instead, I just gave her a polite smile and left. Jason's little performance meant to show off how well he was doing had ended in complete humiliation. He'd wanted to impress me, but all he managed to do was make himself a joke again. When September came, I started university. Even though my scores were higher this time, I still chose the same major as in my previous life, software engineering, partly because I already knew the field well, and it would be useful for my future career, but also because I missed the professors and classmates I'd known before. Those 4 years went more smoothly than they ever had in my past life. During the first semester of senior year, I even passed the graduate entrance exam. Coincidentally, the year I graduated was also the year Jason was finally allowed to retake the college entrance exam. When I came home for the holidays, I ran into Mrs. Lee in the neighborhood square. It wasn't really a coincidence. I could tell she'd been hanging around there for quite some time, waiting for people to notice her. She was wearing heavy makeup and a bright red chip. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She was chatting excitedly with the neighbors. My son's taking the exam today. This time he's definitely getting into Stanford. Once he's admitted, I'm throwing a big celebration at the hotel and you're all invited. But no one seemed interested. Some people were playing chess, others were exercising. No one even looked at her. It seemed that in the past 3 years, she'd managed to lose every bit of goodwill she once had. Then she spotted me and immediately hurried over, all smiles. Emma, you're back. You graduated, right? How's life at Stanford? My son's taking the exam again this year. He's applying to Stanford too. When it's time to pick his preferences, could you help guide him a little? Don't leave all the hard work to me. Guide Jason through his college application. What if I said something wrong and he ended up hating me again? The thought made my mind go blank with frustration. Just as I was about to respond, my mom arrived. Her tone was gentle but distant. Oh, Mrs. Lee, you must be joking. She's just a student. How would she know about college applications? You should hire a professional to help Jason. It's better to let experts handle that kind of thing. Mrs. Lee's smile faltered. She looked a little displeased but didn't argue. After a brief silence, she forced a laugh. Fine, fine. I won't argue. It's my son's big day. I won't let anything spoil my mood. She said it lightly, but her joy came too early. Just then, Jason appeared at the gate of the neighborhood. He was wearing a jacket and carrying his exam folder. His shoulders hunched, his head hanging low. His whole face looked utterly defeated. When Mrs. Lee saw her precious son coming back, she ran toward him in excitement. Jason, you're back. How was the exam? Was it easy for you? Then she suddenly realized something was off. Wait, it's not even time for the exam to end yet. Why are you home so early? Jason let out a weary sigh. His expression completely drained. Because I couldn't write the essay. I couldn't come up with anything. I handed in a blank paper. It was as if the sky collapsed for Mrs. Lee. The shock hit her so hard that she dropped straight to the ground. Her voice trembled as she stuttered. A blank paper? How could you be so reckless? Without the essay points, how are you ever going to get into Stanford? Jason rubbed his temples impatiently. I don't even want to take the rest of the exams. Forget it. Mrs. Lee wailed on the ground, crying and screaming, but Jason didn't even glance at her. He just turned and walked away, leaving her there. On the way home, my mom told me everything that had happened to Jason over the years. It turned out Jason had regretted his choices long ago. His life after that had been anything but smooth. At first, he took $200,000 of his mother's retirement savings to start a cafe, but it failed miserably. He lost every cent. Later, he started delivering food. One day, while dropping off an order at a hotel, he ran into Lena with another man. In a fit of rage, he beat the man up and ended up having to pay $10,000 in compensation. After that, Lena broke up with him. Her reason was cruel but honest. Sure, I can't take the college exam either, she said. But at least I still have my looks. You, on the other hand, have nothing. Your life is already ruined, but I still have a future. And your mother, I don't even want to talk about her. She treats me like her enemy every day. How could we ever have a future together? After that day, Lena never came to Jason's house again. From then on, Jason changed completely. He locked himself in his room and started studying again. There was still a year left before he could retake the exam. But even though he was preparing for it, his mood was unstable. He would often shout at his mother, slam doors, and break things. The neighbors were terrified of the constant noise. Worse still, he didn't just yell. He hit her. Mrs. Lee was always covered in bruises, her face swollen and discolored. When people asked what had happened, she'd force a smile and say she'd just fallen, unwilling to admit the truth. Maybe she did it to protect what little reputation her son had left. One time during one of his violent outbursts, Jason screamed, "If you hadn't bullied Lena all the time, she never would have left me. It's all your fault we broke up." Those words sounded eerily familiar to me. In my past life, I had been the one he blamed for ruining his love. This time, it was his mother's turn. Jason never once reflected on himself, neither in the last life nor in this one. To him, everything bad that happened was always someone else's fault. But the truth was, every choice had always been his to make. This time, Mrs. Lee didn't even do anything outrageous. She simply hated Lena, which was perfectly human. After all, who could be expected to feel kindly toward the girl who had destroyed her son's future? Jason could have just left home with Lena, or he could have spoken to his mother directly and told her not to mistreat Lena anymore. Mrs. Lee might have been difficult, but Jason was her only son. She would have listened to him. But he did nothing. He never once stood up for Lena. Instead, he guilt-tripped her, claiming he'd sacrificed everything for her, and using that to manipulate her emotionally. So, when Lena finally ended things, the real reason was Jason himself. Mrs. Lee endured it all for a year. The upcoming exam became her one last hope. She still believed her son was that same genius he'd once been, the boy who could take first place without breaking a sweat. She told herself that once he got into Stanford, all their suffering would end. 2 days before the exam, she even dressed up, putting on makeup and bragging to everyone that her son was definitely getting into Stanford this time. Once he was admitted, she said proudly, "I'll finally be able to hold my head high again." But she was wrong. Her mistake was believing in a fantasy. She thought her son could simply pick up where he'd left off 3 years earlier. Back then, Jason had been a top student because he studied relentlessly for 3 years straight, surrounded by excellent teachers in Westview's advanced placement class, equipped with the best exam materials, and constantly challenged by outstanding peers. But now he had none of that. No teachers. He had no classmates. Studying alone at home every day, how could he possibly do well? Maybe if he were still the same top student he once was, he might have had a chance. But in the past 2 years, he hadn't studied at all. Everything he'd learned in high school was long gone. All of Mrs. Lee's hopes finally turned to dust. After that day, Jason locked himself in his room for several days straight. He used to believe that even though he'd lost Lena, even though his business had failed, he could still start over after the next college entrance exam. But now that dream was shattered, and he simply couldn't accept it. What broke him even more came right after. In the same week, Jason failed the exam. Lena bought a 3-story villa in a luxury neighborhood and began living the kind of life most people could only dream of. After breaking up with Jason, she'd started working as an online influencer. Because of her beauty, she gained millions of followers in just a year and became a huge internet celebrity. While Jason sank to rock bottom, she had reached the peak of her life. Just like she'd once said, her beauty was her greatest asset. Even though she could never take the exam again, her looks gave her another way out. But Jason only had one path, the college exam. And now that road was completely closed to him. He had nowhere left to go. One quiet evening, Jason took a knife and slipped out of the house. The next day, news spread across the city. A popular influencer had been found dead in her luxury villa. By the 3rd day, Jason was caught. After his arrest, he made only one request. He wanted to see me. I went. I wanted to see him at his lowest, to see the man who had once killed me brought down to nothing. It was satisfying. When we met again, Jason broke down in tears. Wiping his nose, he stammered, "Emma, why didn't you stop me this time?" I laughed coldly. Stop you? The last time I stopped you? How did you repay me? You refused to take me to the hospital when I was in labor. You let me die in agony. Why would I stop you again? So you could kill me a second time. Jason hung his head, crying uncontrollably. No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It shouldn't have turned out this way. I shot him a sharp, mocking look. Jason, both Lena and I gave you chances. If in your past life you had truly understood that cheating was wrong, if you had chosen to listen, we could have been a happy family. Don't you see? The one who was wrong all along was you. Yet you always blamed everyone else for your own mistakes. I tore away every last shred of the excuses he hid behind, forcing him to face the truth he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. In that moment, waves of regret crashed through his eyes, so deep, so painful they almost drowned him. He clutched his head, screaming and sobbing like a madman, until the guards came to drag him away. That was the last time I ever saw Jason. Not long after, he was sentenced to death. After his execution, Mrs. Lee seemed to lose the will to live. She followed him soon after. As for me, I finally found my rebirth. Jason's death took away all the injustice and misfortune of my previous life. Now I have caring classmates, a mentor who values me, and loving parents. My future lies on a bright open road. My beautiful life, the one that truly belongs to me, has only just begun.